And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Jake will be out until Wednesday. Excited to have him back at that, but enjoying his vacation. Me rolling solo today. Christian Esparza running the board, producing the show. We've got a busy day for you. Coming up at 10 o'clock, which is right now. Next couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by Ricky O'Donnell from SB Nation. He's going to give us a breakdown on the NBA draft, the NBA Finals, with Game 5 coming up tonight after the Oklahoma City Thunder evened it up on Friday on the road at Indiana, putting the Pacers into some very difficult situations now, needing to win once again on the road in either Game 5 or Game 7 to keep this alive, in addition to having to win at home coming up on Game 6. And then we're going to continue to break down the draft a little bit. Coming up at 11:05, Zach Smith is going to join us, talking some Big 12 football and basketball. We're also going to catch you up on VJ Edgecombe. Well, I think there's a real chance he's on the board for the Jazz at 5, and might be difficult to pass on if he slips there, considering he was kind of a consensus top 4 pick all year long. So excited to talk to both those guys, Ricky and Zach, coming up. We might even let you hear from Kalani Sitake, who was on with DJ and PK this morning. If you missed it, coming up at 11:30 down at their golf tournament. So that was cool for Kalani to jump on as part of the charity movement. So cool show we've got coming up for you. Again, Jake's going to be back with us coming up on Wednesday. So we've got a busy show, and the draft is, 10 days away from right now. It's a week from Wednesday night. It's a 2-night affair. Once again, they're doing it the first round on Wednesday, the second night on Thursday night. The Jazz have 2 picks in the first round coming up at number 5 and number 21. And then the Jazz are going to have number 43 and number 53 in the second round. Not seeing a lot of value in the second round, but you just never know who's going to fall. And, basically anytime you find any player who can play in the second round, you feel like it's been successful, even in bad years. So a good couple of weeks for the Utah Jazz coming up ahead. All right, let's welcome in our next guest, talking about the draft, talking about the NBA in general. You can find him on Twitter at SBN_Ricky. Read him at SB Nation. It is Ricky O'Donnell. What's going on, Ricky?
What's going on?
Let's talk about Game 5 quickly. Coming up tonight, Pacers go back to Oklahoma City. I think this is maybe the Pacers are probably still ahead of schedule compared to where a lot of people thought going into this series. But after losing Game 4, in my opinion, that felt like that was the game the Pacers had to have if they really wanted to have a chance to win this series. Am I throwing dirt on the Pacers too early?
Well, I sort of agree with you that I thought that, if the Pacers win that game, 3-1 series lead, they would absolutely have control of the series, and they should have been able to win it. Now at 2-2 definitely favors Oklahoma City in the best of 3, but I wouldn't totally write off the Pacers. We've seen them win a game in Oklahoma City before during this series in Game 1, and they've just been pulling these wild comebacks out of nowhere the entire postseason. So I'm not going to say the Pacers have no chance to win the series. I think if you're a Pacers fan, you should still be feeling pretty good about where they're at just to get this to 2-2 through 4 games. Obviously, Oklahoma City is just the better team, and they've been the better team the entire season. They have a pretty clear talent advantage in this matchup. But, I like a lot of the things I've been seeing from the Pacers. I think the Pacers have the coaching advantage, for one. I think that, maybe they can try to figure some things out with how Oklahoma City kind of got the switches they wanted late in Game 4. They kind of gave them the upper hand. So I trust Rick Carlisle to find some answers, and I still think there's a lot of basketball left to be played in this series.
I've wondered how many adjustments the Pacers can make, and I know that's always difficult. And again, we're talking about, as you mentioned, one of the best coaches in the NBA and probably a future Hall of Famer in Rick Carlisle. Is there anything obvious that you think you would go to? I thought maybe Miles Turner was a little clunky, and they rely on Obi Toppin, who's had a relatively good series.
Yeah, Turner's just been in a total funk over the last 2 games. I don't think the Pacers can win this series if Miles Turner keeps shooting 2 for 10 or 3 for 10 like he has the last couple games. And you're right, Obi Toppin's been really good as his replacement in some lineups, but that just really doesn't have enough defense with him and Siakam there. So I think Turner just has to make shots. That's not a real adjustment, and it's not a groundbreaking idea, but Miles Turner is missing the shots that he has been making for most of this postseason run and most of the season. He's just been way off. So somehow the Pacers need to find a way to get him going. I liked what Carlisle did, just eliminating the Thomas Bryant minutes in Game 4. Indiana really outplayed Oklahoma City for the majority of that game. which is, of course, part of the reason why it's so frustrating to lose. But, yeah, it's tough for me to come up here with, ideas Carlisle can go to for Game 5 and Game 6, but he's been pushing all the right buttons, and I'm sure he's going to think of something.
Big trade yesterday at kind of a weird time. We don't generally see this level of trade happen during the NBA Finals. Generally, it seems like everyone wants to let everyone sit. So if you wanted to make a different phone call, you could call one of these teams and maybe see if they have an offer. But Desmond Bane getting traded by the Memphis Grizzlies to the Orlando Magic for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Cole Anthony, somewhat deceptive. I'm seeing a lot of people say 4 unprotected first-round picks. It's like, well, we know one of them is the 16th pick, so it's top 15
right.
Protected at best. we know where it's coming. But that's still a pretty amazing haul for Desmond Bane, who's a great player and has probably just gone under the radar because Memphis has been a mini disaster over the last 2.5 seasons with all the Ja Morant stuff. But what did you think of this move? What did you think of the price tag?
Yeah, really fascinating trade. I mean, first of all, you got to respect the Magic for going for it in the East. The East just looks like it's going to have a really down year next season, and there's absolutely room for a young team to jump up into the elite mix. I think the Magic check a lot of boxes for that type of team that can do it. Their defense was already so good and so tough. Next season, they were able to, or this season, I should say, they were able to protect all their young players in this deal, which is one reason why it required so many first-round picks. They didn't trade Tristan da Silva. They didn't trade Anthony Black. They even held on to some of their center depth. So really, this is just a pure additive move, I think, for the Magic. And Bane is a perfect fit for what they need. They needed another ball handler. They needed a knockdown shooter. And they needed somebody who could provide those things without compromising an elite defense. And Bane checks all those boxes. So, if you're going to scour the league for a non-max level player who fits everything Orlando needed, I think Bane is sort of the perfect guy for that. They did trade a lot. 4 unprotected first-round picks, like you said, is just in dishonest framing of this, though. Even the 2026 pick they got in the deal is the worst of the Suns and Wizards pick. Now, that could be the number 2 overall pick next year because Phoenix and Washington will probably both be expected to have down seasons. Certainly, that's the big prize in this trade going to Memphis. But I really like this deal for both sides. I like that Orlando is taking a swing and going for it. They found a player who complements the Paolo Banchero-Franz Wagner pairing perfectly. I think Jalen Suggs and Desmond Bane in the backcourt is going to be fascinating. Just, it follows the trend we've seen the last couple of years with the Celtics as champions and now the Thunder, that the Magic are just going to have no weak links to attack defensively. Now, the Magic were the worst shooting team in NBA history last year relative to era and competition. So, Bane, I think he's a 41% career three-point shooter. He's elite at catch and shoots. He's going to fit like a glove there. Big picture question for Orlando is, does Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero work as a pairing? Orlando's been better with, one of those guys on the court and one of them off the court over the last couple of years. Obviously, they're both monster talents and, both could be all-NBA players if everything goes right. I like it for Orlando. I like it for Memphis. I think it's a really risky deal for Orlando, but you got to respect them for going for it when they have an opportunity. So I'm very happy to see this trade to kick off trade season in the NBA, and I think we're going to have a lot more interesting deals as the summer goes on.
And to your point, as you said, Orlando still has a lot of young players, and they still have a pick in the 20s. They still have guys like Jet Howard, who I'm not a huge buyer on, but maybe he still breaks through, or Anthony Black. So there's still some flexibility going forward if they either want to make more deals or cut salary and rely on some of their young players, where I think it's fascinating. My question is, how open is the East actually? And I think everyone looks at the Pacers and says, well, if Indiana can do it with that roster, we can. Do you think you're going to see teams, and I worry about your area specifically with Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago Bulls, thinking we could be middle of the class and jump up to the finals? Are teams going to fool themselves into thinking they're competitors or contenders earlier than they actually are?
Yeah, I think so. And that's especially the case when you see a 50-win Pacers team that started the year 9-14 go on this magical run to the finals. So, yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at the East next year, the top of the East is the Pacers, the Cavs, the Knicks, and now I would put the Magic into that. Who are you really scared of for those teams? And I go back to, when the Warriors had Durant and Steph Curry. It felt like the rest of the league was scared to compete at that time because they really didn't think there was a pathway to beating the Warriors. There's no one you should be scared of in the East right now. The Cavs are good. The Pacers are good. I mean, are the Pacers really going to catch lightning in a bottle again next year to be back in this position? They're also going to get really expensive really soon. Aaron Nesmith is making $11 million right now. He's got 1 year left, and then he'll probably be making $30 million. And the Pacers are just naturally going to start to lose some talent because all their guys will be more well-respected after this run. So I think you're right about some teams going delusional in this. In the middle tier of the East, the Bulls are a premium example. You could see the Hawks doing it. You could see the Raptors doing it. Sort of all the poorly run teams in the East could convince themselves, well, maybe we could get the 6th seed next year. That's kind of what I like about the Magic trade for Bane, though, is I don't think they have a ceiling on their team after this deal. I think the Magic could win the East next year. Now, it would take a lot of things going right for them, but I don't think they should be scared of the Pacers or, the Cavs going into the season. Like, they have the talent to beat those teams if everything comes together. So I do think the East is really open next year. I don't think anyone would have predicted the Pacers coming out this year. And, next year I'm not scared of anyone. So it certainly could fool some teams into making some rash decisions. But in terms of Orlando's bet specifically, I do think it gives them an NBA Finals ceiling, maybe not an NBA champion ceiling. We'll see about that. But I do think the East is open, so I'm buying that.
Do you think it convinces Milwaukee to hold on to Giannis for another year and try and run it back because the East feels relatively wide open?
I think that is purely Giannis's call, and if Giannis wants to stay there, he's going to stay there. And that probably has more to do with just like the fact that the whole organization is catered to his whims than it is anything else. He just had his 4th baby with his wife, so is this really a good time for him to be pushing his way to a new home? Giannis has everything he wants in Milwaukee, aside from a chance to really compete. If I'm looking at the Bucks, I see no way the Bucks are building a competitive team in the East around Giannis in the next 2 or 3 years. I know things can change quickly in the NBA, but the Bucks are nowhere close. They haven't hit on any draft picks. They haven't really discovered any diamonds in the rough through free agency or trades as depth pieces. They have no future draft capital. So I think the Bucks are totally painted into a corner despite Giannis's greatness. The ball's in Giannis's court, though. I don't think the Bucks should want to trade Giannis, even if, it does sort of seem like they'll be drawing dead from a winning the East perspective over the next few years. If Giannis wants to move, he's going to move. And if not, they're just going to keep running it back, and the Bucks will find a way to eventually, maybe trade Damian Lillard a year from now. And you have, more draft picks open to be traded at that point. Maybe you could find a way to build a decent team in the East again.
NBA draft is 10-ish days away, 9 days away from right now. Gets really interesting at 3. And obviously the Jazz sitting at number 5. There's been a lot of focus. Do you have any confidence in the players you think are going to go 3, 4, and 5? Like, not the order, but necessarily like the specific names. Do you think you could nail them down?
That's a great question. Yeah, 3, 4, 5. I would expect VJ Edgecombe to definitely be in that mix. I'd probably pick Con Knipple in that mix, and then probably Kaman Malawak. But it's pretty much wide open, as you alluded to. I think, after Dylan Harper goes off the board at number 2, the Sixers hold the keys to the draft at number 3. I feel like the Hornets would love to get a crack at Edgecombe, so he's either going to go 3 or 4. And then the Jazz could go any number of ways with that 5th pick. I mean, they could take, 6 or 7 different guys, and I wouldn't be totally shocked. At number 5, I would assume the hot names locally are Ace Bailey, if he's still on the board, Trey Johnson out of Texas, Con Knipple out of Duke, maybe Malawak. So, the Jazz could go in any direction, really, at number 5. Like, to me, they're still a blank slate. Austin Ainge might have said that he doesn't see, the Jazz tanking next year. Well, the reality is the Jazz are in the West, and every team in the West is super good, besides for the Jazz, really. So even if they're not trying to lose on purpose, I think they're still going to be in the mix for a top pick in 2026. And, maybe just the fact that he came out and said we're not going to tank will help the lottery gods get on their side next year.
Where do you fall in the Trey Johnson, Con Knipple comparison conversation? Because that seems to be the hottest debate in Utah right now.
Yeah, I think they're both really good prospects, some different strengths and weaknesses. They're the 2 best shooters in this class. So, whichever one you prefer from that perspective, I think should be appealing to Utah at number 5. But they're both really good players. I give a slight edge to Knipple just because I think his feel for the game is stronger, and I trust him more as a secondary creator than I do for Trey Johnson. Now, Trey Johnson is absolutely elite as a movement shooter. I think he has better athletic tools, and he probably give you a little bit more defensive resistance. But I just like Knipple's all-around game. I think he's such a smart player. His shooting is obviously elite. And I love the way he developed into a ball handler this year in the two-man game with Malawak at Duke. Felt like every time you watched Duke this year, Knipple was just feeding the big man on lobs, on rolls to the rim. And I think that that's just like super, super critical to building a good NBA offense. I mean, if a Knipple NBA comparison is Desmond Bane, look how valuable Desmond Bane is just on the NBA trade market. You know, is a guy who's not super athletic, not super big, but he's a knockdown shooter who gives you secondary ball handling. And while I don't think Knipple's defensive ceiling is as high as Bane's, he's at least smart enough and big enough to get to a point where he's not going to be targeted and he's not going to be a total liability. So if I had to choose between the two, I like Knipple over Johnson. I do think Johnson is still a good prospect and would be a fine fit for the Jazz at number 5 if they decide to go with him. But I like Knipple more in a vacuum in this draft class.
Two guys who 6 games into the season looked like top 5 picks were Yegor Demin at BYU and Kasparis Yakushonis at Illinois. And they have both slipped. You have heard absolutely nothing about Yakushonis during the pre-draft process. It's been bizarrely silent. And then everything about Yegor is he's shooting the ball really well in workouts, but we just really never saw that at BYU. What do you think of those two players, kind of who they are in the NBA and where they're going to come off the board?
Yeah, I think that Demin is really scary to me. I did an article on SB Nation just on a few prospects I'm fading in this class. Desmond was the first guy on that list. Now, certainly he could still end up having a good NBA career. 6'9" with a truly elite skill with his passing. I think that that's going to be appealing to teams at some point in the first round, but I just see absolutely no burst in him as a ball handler. He can't do anything without a screen in terms of getting downhill. And, you know, you could look at his shooting volume and think, well, this guy took so many threes. That's usually a good sign for long-term shooting development. I felt like he was settling for threes most of the time because he couldn't get anything else as a scorer himself. So to me, Demin just doesn't really threaten the defense as a scorer whatsoever. And then defensively, he's just like so weak and just like a little soft defensively for what position he's going to be guarding. Like he's not quick enough to guard opposing point guards at the point of attack, and he's not quick enough to be, or he's not strong enough to be guarding fours. So to me, Demin is a little bit a man without a position. I prefer Yakushonis between the two of them. I think Yakushonis certainly has his own flaws. Neither of these guys are very athletic. Yakushonis only had one dunk in his freshman season at Illinois. But I can at least see the vision of Yakushonis turning into a good NBA player in a way that I struggle to with Demin. Just great passing vision, passing creativity for Yakushonis. He's physically a much stronger player, which I think will aid him in terms of drawing fouls, which he was really good at as a freshman at Illinois. I think it gives him a higher floor defensively and just like gives him, you know, he has more of a slot to defend with NBA shooting guards, I think will be his main assignment. And then Yakushonis has a really good step back. And to me, he's a little bit over-reliant on the step back. When he gets a big on a switch, you know that he's going for that left step back. But he hit it at a pretty good rate, and that's a shot that is a star-making shot in the NBA. If he could hit it as frequently as, let's say, Tyrese Halliburton does, I think that you could see a pathway to Yakushonis, if not being an all-star, being like a really solid starter. I don't know if he's going to be a primary initiator in the NBA. I don't think he's quite athletic enough to be that. So he's going to have to get better off the ball as an offensive player. He's someone who right now I view as being a better shooter off the dribble than off the catch. That's rare in the NBA. Most guys are better off the catch, but it just seems like Yakushonis needs to get into a rhythm a la James Harden to really be knocking down shots. So I like Yakushonis. I think that he's a legit lottery pick in this class. I view Demin as a first-rounder, but maybe more of someone who should probably go in the 20s than someone who should go in the lottery. And probably the Jazz, you know, I could see the Jazz considering either of those guys at number 5, but I think there'll be better options on the board for Utah with that first pick.
I think there's a chance Yegor's on the board at 21 when they have their second pick. Other names you think might be interesting there at 21?
Yeah, I think the Demin fit could make some sense for Utah if they really like him there. Other guys on the board for Utah, let me see at 21.
And it doesn't even have to be specific fit. I think at that point, obviously, you're just looking best player available. But who are some names that you're intrigued by in those 20s in that area?
Yeah, I think Rasheer Fleming could be an interesting bet for Utah. Just a great combination of strength and length, 7'5" wingspan, 250-pound frame or 240-pound frame. So, he's just like a connective piece where he could space the floor for Isaiah Collier. He could, get out of the way for whoever you're drafting at number 5 and just give you some rebounding, some length in terms of paint protection. Could be a decent option there. I don't know if Cedric Howard will still be on the board at number 21. Seems like he's rising above that. But I think Cedric Howard would be another fine bet for the Jazz at 21. He's not someone who I have a lot of conviction in terms of this guy's definitely going to be a great player. But he's got the length that you look for. He's got the shooting pedigree that you look for. So I think he could be an interesting bet. And how about Walter Clayton Jr. too for Utah, maybe at number 21? I think that he's got sneaky high upside in this class as someone who could just create offense off the dribble, can rain three-pointers on pull-ups. It's tough to fit him into a backcourt because it's who does he defend? Is he really a primary playmaker? But he reminds me so much of Peyton Pritchard coming out of Oregon, who had a tremendous year for the Boston Celtics this year. It's just, a shoot-first, undersized guard who knows how to get buckets. So those are a few guys I'd name for the Jazz at 21.
I was going to tell you, I think Walter Clayton screams Ainge DNA. I mean, that's the guy they have drafted over and over late in first rounds and seem to have a lot of success with, and I think the Peyton Pritchard comp is right on. Hey, Ricky, really great stuff. You find him on Twitter at SBN_Ricky. Read him at SB Nation. Thanks for jumping on and enjoy the draft.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Ricky O'Donnell, giving us a breakdown on everything in the NBA. When we come back, top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Austin Ainge announces the president of basketball operations for the Utah Jazz. They've got a lot of work, obviously. There's not just a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of years to have to figure some things out. This is not a business position. This is a personnel position within the organization, and that is to say, hey, look, we have got to get the right personnel in the building. We've got to figure this thing out. We've got to find exactly where it is that we want to put ourselves.
This is a big loss for the Celtics. He played a big role in helping assemble the roster that they currently have. Brad Stevens runs the day-to-day operations of the Boston Celtics, and it says a lot that Brad could have sent Danny's son packing a long time ago if he didn't have value. Instead, he made him the assistant general manager. He helped build that roster that won an NBA championship last year. He has earned the place where he's at in the NBA today.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Very happy Monday to everybody out there. Christian, how was your Father's Day? You're not a father, but how was it? You have a father.
Had a great time. I do have a dad. Took him out golfing. Made him some smash burgers.
Oh, nice.
On the griddle, so that was awesome. Yeah, always a great time.
Explain the griddle. You have an outdoor grill?
You
have a Blackstone?
My dad has a Blackstone,
okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to say the name, but yeah.
I didn't know if you're inside with one of the little electrical ones that
No, the big,
on.
It's outside, you don't have to worry about getting all the smoke inside the house. Sure. They're really nice.
Good. You made them?
Yeah.
Nice. You have a little press?
Press, me and my brother, split it was like we had a cooking line.
Dual duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, good for you. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. It's obviously just a tragic weekend in Salt Lake City, and hope, though, everyone had some nice Father's Day memories out there otherwise. All right, let's get to the top 3 stories brought to you by our friends at J. Brooks Jewelers. J. Brooks, cherish your loved ones with J. Brooks Jewelers. Explore your expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials at J. Brooks Jewelers. You can find them online, jbrooksjewelers.com. All right, let's go up number 1.
Number 1, we all know about the big trade yesterday. The Memphis Grizzlies sending Desmond Bane to the Orlando Magic. This could mean some big things for the Utah Jazz.
Rebuilding right now. Everyone's kind of got the gas put down, including the Jazz. The Jazz are intending to try to turn it up.
Windy is... He's had some... That was Brian Windhorst, by the way, from ESPN. Windy. He, was kind of early in on the Utah Jazz blowing everything up in 2022. He has the famous meme of what's going on in Utah, and that was after the Jazz traded Royce O'Neal and a day before they traded Rudy Gobert. So I'm sure he's connected. I'm sure he's talked to people. He certainly is very well connected around the NBA. What I would say, and where I think there's probably a misnomer around the Utah Jazz or what Danny Ainge has been doing, the Jazz have looked to improve their roster every summer. That's when you improve your roster. It's really hard to do in season unless you're, a borderline championship team or a good playoff team, and you think there's that one or two little piece out there that could jump in and help you. Generally, teams don't make big swings in season. It's hard to do. Golden State Warriors were trying to salvage Steph Curry's career, and every playoff run is critical because he's probably only got 2 or 3 left. So you go and make a Jimmy Butler trade. Where the Jazz are in their rebuild, they're not going to make those types of trades in season. So in the offseason, the Jazz are really looking to get better, and they did last summer, and they're going to again this summer. So in that sense, I'm not necessarily sure that anything Brian Windhorst is saying is like groundbreaking or should be taken as a change in direction for the Utah Jazz. I think this was always the plan to look at getting better. I would still go back to Austin Ainge coming on DJ and PK, was that 2 weeks ago now, and acknowledging that the top 8 protected pick that they have, that if it doesn't fall in the top 8, belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder, is of critical importance still. Even if they want to get better, even if they want to improve the team, they're still going to do it with that pick in mind, knowing that you've either got to be really good and get a lot better, or you've still got to be one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in the NBA next year, and they should have the ability to do it. The question becomes, does the Desmond Bane trade change the valuation of a Lauri Markkanen or a John Collins or a Colin Sexton, what the Jazz feel like they can get? Where it's interesting is that last year, within the trades that happened, specifically Luka Doncic being the big trade, only 1 pick was moved. The Bulls didn't even get a pick for Alex Caruso, who's turned into a very good player. Maybe they got 1 pick? I think it was just Josh Giddey.
It wasn't a first-round pick.
Yeah, right. It was Josh Giddey.
That's the big thing.
Was the big thing. So the fact that 4 picks were moved, 2 of them truly unprotected, 1 of them a pretty good pick from the Suns next year, and then the 16th pick this year, which is a good pick. 16 is a good number. Maybe that means teams are a little bit more willing to go all in again this summer, and the values of draft picks kind of come and go. That's where I think Jazz fans are curious. I don't think you're getting 4 firsts for Lauri Markkanen.
Another reason why, they're sending so many picks away is also partially Memphis is taking on KCP's contract, which is pretty detrimental. So you could imagine at least one of those picks is simply just for taking on that awful contract.
Where I actually think this is where it nearly directly impacts the Jazz is, I thought the Magic should have looked at Colin Sexton. I thought he was a very natural pick to go there. He could play in the backcourt with Jalen Suggs, even though they'd be a little small. But he's a 40% three-point shooter, a la Desmond Bane. Bane's a better shooter, but Colin's a knockdown shooter as well. Provides some backcourt creation. He's a pretty good scorer. Not a bad defensive player. Bane's better, but not a bad defensive player. And I thought that the value was the Jazz could take KCP's contract back. In fact, I think their deals are almost identical to one another. So the Jazz could have taken that back for Colin Sexton and maybe like the 16th pick this year, or maybe even 2 picks. And clearly that didn't materialize. So that's where I thought maybe this would impact the Jazz most closely, more so necessarily than being, well, if Bane's worth 4 picks, then Lowry's worth 4 picks. It's not 1-to-1. Desmond Bane, as Ricky O'Donnell joined us in the last segment, he was such a great specific fit with what Orlando was looking for. He slides in perfectly. They didn't have to give up any of their young players. They've got still young players on their roster. They've got future draft capital still. This was just a nearly perfect fit for a roster, the same way the Timberwolves were willing to give up so much to get Rudy Gobert. They just thought it was exactly the right player they needed, and that's why they made that trade. So I wouldn't necessarily look for a similar return from a guy like Lauri Markkanen. But it's also a reminder why the Jazz just haven't given them away. These guys have value, and you don't want to sell them at half the cost you think you could get at a later trade date.
Yeah, Bane is really cost-controlled over the next 4 years as well. But, I don't think this trade all of a sudden wakes up and it's like, oh, Lowry is going to bring 4 picks back for the Jazz and John Collins is going to get another 3.
It may be the opposite. It may, the same way a lot of people thought Rudy Gobert ruined the trade market because the Jazz got such a high price for him that every team started asking too much. You almost wonder if the Jazz are going to now ask for so much in a trade because Bane fetched such a high price tag that it's going to make him even harder to move because the Jazz aren't willing to give him up. Anyways, number 2.
Number 2, NBA Finals back in Oklahoma City, Game 5 tonight.
I thought the Pacers really needed to win Game 4. You kind of had the champion on their heels. You were up in the fourth quarter. You had a chance to win that game. And they just got really clunky down the stretch, and they just did not execute very well. Credit to Mark Daigneault and the Oklahoma City Thunder for the adjustments that they made. They rested Shai Gilgeous-Alexander throughout the game more so to make sure he was ready in the fourth quarter. And then he was. He was just the best player on the floor in the fourth quarter. You saw the MVP level Shai come out. But he had 15 points. I know there was a lot of
15 of their last 16.
15 of their last 16. I know there was a lot of criticism that he didn't have any assists in the game. They won. It's the only stat that matters. He did what he had to get that team a victory, and they now go back to OKC with that series tied. I do think this is the Thunder's now to lose, but the Pacers are extraordinarily resilient, and they have the ability, because they have so many good players across their roster, to have one or two players get hot, whether that's an Obi Toppin or an Aaron Nesmith or even a Miles Turner, who has not been good in this series, to step up and shoot the ball well. And then, of course, you have both Pascal and Tyrese Halliburton as well. So this is going to be a tough game for Indiana. I think the Thunder are going to have a lot of momentum, but truly the Pacers have thrived in some of these toughest environments where I didn't expect them to find a way to get wins. And they've won 2 road games in each of their playoff series so far, and they've only got 1 in OKC right now. So I'm not putting it past them to do it. I just think it's a very steep uphill climb.
Talked about this on the Saturday show a little bit. I think that Shai's performance is exactly what the NBA wants as far as, you know, the MVP playing at that sort of level, taking over Game 4, and essentially this is his coming out party to be the next face of the league, because they've been searching for that. Who's it going to be since once LeBron retires?
Sure.
So as far as the ratings and stuff goes, like the best case scenario for the NBA is for Shai to play like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to have your stars play at star level. And one of the hard parts about Tyrese Halliburton is that, like, he has a lot of games where he has 15 and 7.
He's scored 20 points once in this final series.
Yeah, and it's like, that doesn't mean he's not the Pacers' best player. I think he still is. He and Pascal are the top 2. He's just not the guy who's going to go out and put up 30 every night. He can, but he's not going to go and look to do that. He really tries to get everybody involved, and it's a little bit more the Steve Nash. I mean, I think that comp is actually there, even though I know they're totally different heights and kind of somewhat different styles of players, but not really. I mean, they are offensive engines and offensive juggernauts who don't necessarily need to go 20 and 10 every night. They can dominate a game with 15 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds, and really have a huge impact on the game, even if they're not great defensive players. So I think that's what you're seeing, but that's a little bit harder to market than a guy who dunks a lot. I mean, has Tyrese Halliburton dunked 5 times in the playoffs? Probably not. Even on breakaways, he likes to lay it in. So good game, 5 tonight. We'll see what happens.
Number 3, over to the Stanley Cup Finals. Florida, they take a 3-2 lead.
And a stinker of a game 5. You thought maybe going back to Edmonton, there'd be a chance for that game to be more exciting. Maybe the Oilers could take the series lead after that shocking win that they had in Game 4, coming back from down 3-0. And they lost 5-2. It just wasn't. It was exactly what we had seen previously in the series, that Florida is the better team, and Edmonton, at their absolute best, can send these to extra periods and can get it to overtime and can compete when you have that type of talent at the top with Draisaitl and McDavid. But overall, Florida's the better team, and they are on the verge of repeating.
Yeah, I think overtime benefits Edmonton in the sense that, yeah, their top-end talent, their 2 best players are better than Florida's 2 best players, but I think what we've learned, and everybody had been saying it already, but this Florida team is just so deep. I mean, they're 6-7 players deep.
Top to bottom, they're better. And that's when you're going to win in the first 60 minutes of the game. And yeah, if you drop it down to next goal wins, you're going to give Edmonton a puncher's chance, and because they've got some great punchers, but both literally and figuratively. But they've got talent to put the goal or the puck in the back of the net. They just don't do it consistently enough.
Edmonton's goaltending has been shaky, too. I know that Picard kind of gave them some momentum a little bit, but if it's to the point where you're still not sure who you're going to be starting in net night in and night out, I mean, and they're like putting updates, oh, yeah, Picard is in net tonight. Like, you know, that's a pretty big disadvantage when you get to the finals.
When we come back, we'll look at the surprise from the U.S. Open, and then coming up at 11 o'clock, we'll get you ready for a little bit of Big 12 talk. We're going to be joined by Zach Smith from, he covers Baylor. We'll talk about VJ Edgecombe, Big 12 basketball, some football as well. Stick around. More Jake and Ben coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Eric Weddle, kind enough to join us. You find out you're up for the College Football Hall of Fame. What's your first thought when you get that phone call?
Just humbled by it all, quite honestly. I think I have a real shot at the College Football Hall of Fame. I don't think I have any shot at the NFL Hall of Fame. So when I look at the College Football Hall of Fame, I think, yeah, I belong there at some point, whether it's now or 10 years from now. Like, I think I belong as one of the best college football players to have played the game. So whenever it happens, or if it happens, like, you guys know me, I live life to the fullest. It's not going to change whether I fall asleep at 10 o'clock or midnight. I got many other things that are on my mind. But it's really humbling and truly honored, obviously, and know that it took coaches, players, faculty, family, wife, kids. Like, it doesn't happen alone.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. These guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson
1, 2, 3, move it.
on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
To win the U.S. Open at Oakmont, one of the hardest, if not the hardest test in major championship golf. For the win, J.J. Spaun, ball up and over the ridge. It's on a very good line. This could go in. J.J. Spaun makes it! It's the biggest moment of his career. J.J. Spaun conquers Oakmont and is your 125th U.S. Open champion.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. There you go, Spaun winning the U.S. Open. The leader after day one. And, we talked to Brian Taylor on Friday about would he be able to hold on to it. And he said, maybe you start to believe in him if he's still on the leaderboard coming up on Sunday. And he had fallen back a little bit early, but battled back. So very nice performance from Spaun there. You know what he is secretly? He's a good skateboarder.
Really?
We're getting these millennial kids who grew up playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater that are now golfers. So take that, everybody who thought we were the losers in high school.
Yeah, I'm a dual sport athlete. I'm a golfer and a skateboarder.
Hey, coming up on Wednesday, it's Win Ticket Wednesday on the KSL Sports Zone. You can win tickets with Win Ticket Wednesday. This Wednesday, win tickets to Monster Jam World Finals coming up July 4th and 5th at Rice-Eccles Stadium. Don't miss the biggest Monster Jam event of the year. The finals coming to Utah for the first time. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. Big praise coming for AJ Dybantsa right now. He's with the U19 team and Team USA, and they're just scrimmaging right now. But apparently he's looked far and away like the best player in this class. And, as much as we were talking about this in the top three stories, and you hear people saying, maybe the Jazz aren't going to tank this year, or maybe it's there. Just wait until people actually get a look at AJ Dybantsa and Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer and how good they are. And I promise you, people are going to take their foot off the accelerator. I mean, that's what we have to remember. If it was a bad draft class, sure, people would try and win. They're going to see the top three talent and then really the top 4 or 5 or 6 guys in this class, and they're going to remember, oh, right, we remember why we were up for tanking 2 years ago. Last year or this season, it really was just Cooper Flagg and what he did at the Olympic trials and playing with the select team against the real stars at Paris, and how well he played and how he held his own. You're going to see the same thing from AJ Dybantsa. You're going to see the same thing from Darren Peterson. You're going to see the same thing from Cam Boozer. And early on in the year, people are going to let their foot off the accelerator.
Friend of the show, Kristen Peak, is there at the practice. She put out on X some of the best basketball she has ever seen going on in that practice. But I'm with you, Ben. I would bet on at least one of those 3 having a Cooper Flagg-like season. Maybe not quite to the level as far as single-handedly taking Duke all the way to the Final Four, but those 3 dudes at the top are extremely talented.
And are going to motivate people to tank. They just are. And it's not fun, but it's not a bad strategy if you end up landing one of those guys. All right, when we come back, speaking of the Big 12 and Big 12 basketball, we're going to talk to Zach Smith. He's going to join us from the Waco Tribune-Herald, giving us a breakdown on VJ Edgecombe, a projected top 5 pick in this year's draft, and then we'll look at some Big 12 football and basketball next season. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.